Welcome to The Wedding Edit, a wedding planning podcast for the modern couple. We are your hosts, Kelly and Dana. So, Kelly, we're back with some Q&As from our Instagram.
Yes, we've had quite a few questions this week.
Some really tough ones, actually.
Yeah, it's been good food for thought though, because some of them are things that, I hadn't thought, that people would be curious to know. So but I think it would be, some of these would be really, really common and really helpful. So it's a good episode.
Yeah, I think people will really like that we have two sides to some of them, because I remember when we were talking about these on the phone, you and I had different opinions about the answers.
Yeah, there's going to be this is going to get feisty, everyone. So
girl fight.
Strap yourself in. The podcast may be over after this episode because we may
spicy.
Not agree on anything.
Okay, let's get into the first question.
Yeah. This one's actually, we kind of probably both agree on this one.
Yeah, no, we do.
So we had a listener ask about when they should make contact with vendors or suppliers, and, is it their responsibility to make contact, or are the suppliers going to contact them? And then, when should they make contact, which is a really good question, and it's probably something that a lot of suppliers don't maybe do so well in terms of at the start going, this is when we're going to contact you.
Yeah.
I know some do it really well, but some people probably just go, cool, you've paid your deposit, I'll chat to you soon. Yeah. So, what do you think, Dana?
Well, I think it's something that we've I know that this is something that I've just figured out in the last 2 years, that to kind of preempt when a couple will contact you. So you might hear from somebody a week or two before you're actually meant to contact them. So it's really good if you do I suppose put out that email and say, hey, this is when you're actually going to hear from us. It might be 3 months out or 2 months out, that kind of a thing. We have an email that we send out at Christmas time that tells our couples when we take breaks and when to expect their photos, and just setting those expectations, which if you don't set the expectations, there's a lot of assumptions that are made, but it's different for every kind of supplier. But I do think that we have a responsibility as suppliers to be setting those expectations so that couples don't feel like they're being left high and dry, and so that couples don't feel like they're unsure about things, or that their celebrant or their photographer's gone missing, and they also I think that clients really struggle with feeling like they're annoying their suppliers. So, and you never want them to feel like they're annoying you, and you're not annoying us. So if a couple, emails me and they're like, oh, can you talk to me about what kind of confetti looks best in photos? I am like, this is an amazing question. This is something that I really want to give that feedback to my clients so that they can get the best photos possible for that. And that's not annoying. Do you know what I mean? That's something that they should be able to reach out to their photographer and ask
questions. Yeah. But not every supplier does it that way. Do you know what I mean? As in we can say, well, we think that everyone should do it the way we do it.
But they're not necessarily going to.
For example, and I hope no one takes offense to this, but there's a lot of people I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of suppliers that leave a lot of things to the last minute because they don't really need to think about it until the day. So often musicians, no one that I know, but just often musicians leave it till a few weeks out, and that's fine because they're not really required to do anything until then. Yeah. So if you're a couple and you're like, I haven't heard from my DJ and my wedding's a month or two away, because sometimes as a bride or groom, you're thinking about your wedding 24/7 for 12 months. That DJ doesn't need to think about you until the week leading up to your wedding. So there's nothing wrong with actually contacting them and saying, can we have a chat? I just want to ask you a few questions. So I definitely think in some circumstances, just reach out to your suppliers if you want to know something. The question we got on our Instagram was, in relation to, you know, do I contact my photographer?
Yeah.
Do I contact my celebrant? I think a lot of celebrants actually set expectations at the start and say, like, we'll meet then and then we'll meet then and then we'll meet then. So I guess if you haven't got that clarity from your supplier, ask for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even it's a question to ask when you book the suppliers, and then you can actually put it in your diary. If you're a super organised person and you really want to get everything sorted early, you're going to have to drive that, because as a wedding supplier, you know, there's certain things that I won't do until maybe a month before. So I'm not going to bother putting together, you know, a full detailed floor plan and layout until we've had the final site visit. But I might have like a draft, like a kind of a sketch or a draft earlier on, but that's just so we can tell the florist that this is how long the tables are, kind of thing. This is an estimate. So if someone came to me 6 months out and said, I want a full detailed floor plan for my wedding, I would say, well, we need to do the final site visit, and, you know, your wedding's still like yonks away, because for me 6 months is so far.
Yeah.
We don't need to do the full detailed floor plan yet, because no one needs it. But if they said I need it for a particular reason, then you need to reach out to us if that's the case. Does that
and then
kind
you
of
can
make
move things
sense?
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
other suppliers, like, would you – I'm just thinking what other suppliers.
I think the caterer is something that's really important, but they should tell you when they need to know final numbers, which would be quite late. But then like your menu choices, they'd probably have a set time for that.
Yeah.
But I think though, just the answer is that if you feel like you should have heard from them, contact them.
Yeah.
If you have a question, contact them.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. And don't feel like you're annoying your supplier, because if they haven't set those expectations, that's on them.
But just ask them, you know, if they haven't been clear with you, just ask them, you know, when can I expect to know this or that? One thing actually, just going back to certain things, like I think it's really important to find out certain things that a lot of people forget to talk about or confirm until really late in the process, but it can impact on your styling or your wedding earlier on. So you kind of need to work out early-ish whether you're going to have shared food or not.
Yeah.
And if, again, now I'm putting my stylist hat on again and, like, you know, making it about styling. But I suppose if something is really important to you, then you might have to reach out to your suppliers and sort that out early. So, for example, your caterer doesn't want to know whether you want shared food or individual plates until probably when you're doing your menu stationery. And that might not be for like maybe till 8 weeks out from your wedding, 6 to 8 weeks. So some couples are thinking, why haven't I heard from my caterer? Surely he wants to know this or she wants to know that. They don't care. They don't need to know. But you might actually need to know, because you might have to tell your florist that we actually can't have hundreds and thousands of vases all over the table because we've decided we want shared food.
Yeah.
So in some aspects, you guys kind of need to drive some of those decisions early.
Yeah.
And that might mean contacting your caterer 6 months out, because you might actually have to have that conversation with the caterer, but that's actually not their job to do that with you 6 months out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our next question is how to tell one of your friends that they're not in the bridal party.
Yeah. Or your sister.
Yeah. Or
and
brother.
Especially, and the person who asked was like, if they expect that they are, they just assume that they
exactly.
are.
If somebody assumes that they're going to be in your bridal party and then you have a different idea as the couple.
Do you want to know my opinion on this?
Yes.
Because I had a friend who I wasn't like in the inner circle kind of thing, but like we were good friends. She like just was upfront with me early about it and just said, you know, I can only have this many people. Yeah. They wanted an even bridal party. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it matters if you have an even bridal party, like 3 and 3 or 4 and 4 or whatever. But they wanted that, and her partner wanted that. So, you know, it just didn't make sense for them to have that extra person. You know, costs, it all adds up. I just think if you have positive intent in what you're doing, and you are just open and honest and sit down, and I think it has to be a face-to-face or a phone conversation, because I think it wouldn't come across well in an email or a text.
No, that's true.
Do you agree?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I remember getting like really offended that I wasn't even invited to one of my friend's wedding, and I probably should have been a bridesmaid because we were really close.
Oh,
she
was
lived
it an
interstate
intimate wedding?
though.
Oh.
No. I helped her pick out her wedding dress and everything, and we talked over email quite a lot and everything. But yeah, just at the time, I realised that I wasn't even invited.
Why?
Oh, I have no idea. I think it was a bit complicated.
I feel like this is a sore spot for you. Are you still friends?
No. We're Instagram friends.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah,
That's fine.
That's awkward. That's like a whole nother story. Like, I didn't get invited to the wedding.
Yeah, I've worked through it with a therapist for maybe 15 years now. I'm just kidding.
No, but like I had a really close, this is going off the topic a little bit, but I had a really close work friend who we hung out all the time. And you know how you can become like work besties with someone, but you're not really like weekend besties?
Yeah.
And when she was getting married, you know, she was talking about her wedding all the time, but then I didn't know like her family or anyone in her life, but we were like good mates and went and got coffee all the time together at work. And then she just said to me one day, do you know what? I would love to invite you to my wedding, but we are having a really small wedding. We're only having this many people.
Yeah.
And like, I just can't invite any work people because then it opens up that kind of can of worms.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I just
makes
think,
it so hard.
I think having a chat with someone and, you know, she's like, I love you. Like I adore you, but I can't justify it because then my partner has to he'll be like, well, I want to invite my work buddies and it just becomes too big. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, but with the bridal party thing,
I think it's a face-to-face conversation that you need to have.
Yeah,
especially if they're expecting to be asked, and then you can talk about all the reasons why you wouldn't, although you'd need to be very careful about those reasons, I think, because if somebody's like super vain and you're like, I'm not having you in my wedding because you're just all about yourself, even though I really, really love you.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, how honest can you be with some people? I suppose it depends on the person.
Yeah. So it is a really hard conversation to have, but it's super important to have it and to, I suppose, pay that respect in regards to having it in person, face-to-face.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if it's, for example, you were saying before, if it's, you know, your sister or something like that, I think, it would be wise to have mum or someone else in the family there, you know, as well, if you think that would help with the conversation from both sides so that person feels okay receiving that information. But I think it's important to put yourself in that person's shoes, but even though it's not about them, it's about you. It's your wedding. Put yourself in their shoes and think about, you know, how would you like to receive that information?
Yeah.
And honesty is the best policy, I think.
Yeah.
You know, I think just saying whatever your reasons are, and think about. I think you need to be really honest with yourself about what your reasons are.
Yeah. Oh, well. Absolutely.
Like, why don't you want them in the wedding party?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's because they're going to be a drama queen and make it all about them, I don't know, maybe you would need to filter that message a little bit more delicately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
or
definitely.
maybe just cut that bit out. You know, it's hard because it's like honesty is the best policy, but in some cases that person might not receive that very well. So maybe it's more about, well,
I think it's good to know that person might feel really hurt that you're choosing not to have them in your wedding party because they do really love you and they want to be there for you, especially if they're expecting to be asked. But also I think on the other side of that is that even though they will feel really hurt, I think they'll come around and they'll be like, well, I really love you and I just want what's best for you and I just want you to have what you want and what makes you happy because it is your wedding. So I think that they will come around. Yeah. For our wedding, there was a guest that we had at our wedding that I was her maid of honor when she got married, and I had her do a poem at our wedding because I weighed up who I could have as my bridesmaids, and I felt like 4 was like capped. And so I had like my closest friends and my sister, and then I couldn't even really have my youngest sister. She was like too young. She would have been like a junior bridesmaid, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, I had my best friend or like really close friend. She did a poem for like a reading during our wedding. It was really special. Yeah. So it's a really good way to include her without actually having her as a bridesmaid. And she wasn't offended at all because she knew that I had lots of friends as well. So it's super hard choosing I think your wedding party in general, I know that Doug really struggled with choosing his groomsmen
Yeah.
as well. So it's just it's a hard one.
It is.
I feel like now I just wouldn't have any bridesmaids.
So someone actually asked for specifically bridesmaid etiquette. So this could be related to groomsmen etiquette too. But specific question was bridesmaid etiquette, what should we have to pay for? That's a really trivial question.
Oh, I think that everybody is like they're either for it or against it with like lots of different things.
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's like rules. I mean, it's like what can you afford to pay for?
Yeah.
And also I think it's important that you discuss this all with your partner before you even work out how many people you're having in the wedding party, and you discuss what you're expecting everyone to pay for and what you're planning on paying for, and you be upfront with people when you ask them, because I think if you say to someone, can you be my bridesmaid, or will you be my bridesmaid, sorry, and they say yes, and then like a few months down the track you're like, oh, no, you're paying for everything.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah. I think that there definitely needs to be the expectations laid out before somebody says yes.
Yeah.
To be honest, like it can be so easy to be like, oh, I love this person and they've given me this box that has a champagne glass and like a robe and chocolates and moët or whatever else. But
what do they want from me?
to say yes and be like, you know, that you've got bridesmaids and groomsmen proposals or whatever else. But I think it's a good idea to find out what the expectations are before you say yes, because I've seen so many people in wedding parties just like be really unhappy or have different expectations, and then they're disappointed or they get hurt or it's financially a strain for them.
Yeah.
And it's so important, I think, to know what you're up for, because if you're not going to be able to support the couple, then don't say yes.
Yeah. Yep. I think you do have to, there's an element of like, if you're going to say yes to being in the bridal party or wedding party, there's an element of you have to fork out some money.
Yeah.
But obviously there's no rules about what that limit is. So, you know, so I've got a couple of examples. So I was a bridesmaid in 2 different weddings. One of them, I think the bride paid for the dresses, and I'm not sure if I'm recalling this correctly, but I'm pretty sure we paid for our shoes, or vice versa. Like she paid for the shoes, we paid for the dresses. And then she paid for our hair and makeup. We paid for our nails to be done, you know, and if we wanted a spray tan, we paid for that. So I'm just thinking, what else did we pay for?
Hair and makeup?
No, she paid for that, but we had to pay for our own accommodation the night of the wedding.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. Is that pretty standard?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of, I think that our bridesmaids paid for their hair and makeup.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter like at the end of the day.
Dresses.
Well, there's no rules. And this bride, you know, she was getting a lot of help from her family to pay for the wedding as well. And some people are in a better financial position to pay for those things as well. So for my wedding, my bridesmaids paid for their dresses and I paid for their shoes. I paid for hair and makeup. And actually, I think I even paid for them to get their nails done as well.
That's really generous.
And their tans. I can't remember. Do you know what? I'm recalling this all wrong, and they're gonna listen back and be like, no, she made us. But because they paid for their dresses, I felt like I should pay for like all the other things because the dresses were like $300.
Yeah.
So, you know, each. So I felt like that was a bit expensive, like, and I didn't want to ask them to pay for anything else on top of that. So so they did that, and then I also paid for their accommodation on the night before the wedding.
Yeah.
But then they sorted out their accommodation after that.
Yeah. So I think it's really good for there maybe to be some kind of like wedding party meeting where you do talk about expectations, what needs to be paid for and who is paying for that, just so that everybody is like okay, especially if it's like a destination wedding. That can add up so much as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the only other thing is another wedding that I was a bridesmaid in, it was actually really fun, a little bit financially stressful for quite a few people because it was most of the bridesmaids were in another state to where the wedding was going to be. Everyone had to pay for flights, accommodation. It was a really peak time to travel there. And I think we also all had to travel for the hens as well. So we had to travel for the hens, and then like, you know, a matter of weeks later we had to travel back there for the wedding. And so all up, like, I think I would have spent close to $3,000 just on the hens and the wedding, including like flights, accommodation, and then also the hens. This is one of the things that I think, I don't know if people talk about this enough, but like, you know, how much do you charge the guests versus how much do the bridesmaids or wedding party pay for?
Yeah, sure.
And so, you know, as a bridesmaid, I paid like $800 or $900 to put on this hens party with the other bridesmaids, but because the maid of honor didn't want to charge guests more than $100 each, but then we were having all this extra stuff and it was just getting so expensive. So, you know, it meant that all the bridesmaids had to fork out like $800 or $900 for the day, which is, you know, some people can afford to do that. Some people can't. So there were some people that were in the wedding party that were like really stressed about that. And there was other people that were like, no, like that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the only other thing is like, what do you think is the, you know, etiquette around that?
Well, it's really hard to say, like, everybody's got different budgets. So often the parties are being organised with some knowledge from the couple but not a lot. And I think it's really important that the couple actually set a budget, or if there's things that they specifically want for those parties that they need to pay for some of it. I don't think that it should be completely like free for them. But that's my personal opinion. I just kind of think, you know, if they want something that's like really extravagant, like that's a lot to ask your wedding party to throw for you. And also whoever is like head of each side of the parties as well, if they can afford something different to the rest of the party, they really need to be checking in to see what everybody can afford, because it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
And like, you might get your cheapskates that are like, I can only afford like $50.
Yeah, and like that's not really fair on everyone else either.
Yeah, no,
so like
exactly.
It goes both ways. It's like, you know, and I think sometimes with these, like, you know, when there's the whole, I know there's not as much of the whole maid of honor and best man thing happening as much these days as just you're the wedding party. But sometimes when there's maid of honor or whatever, they get this kind of, they think they've got this control to just throw this huge extravagant party that they can maybe afford to chip in, you know, $800, but not every other person in the wedding party can actually afford that. And sometimes it's a bit like they've just gone rogue and planned it all and said, here you go, give me your money.
Yeah,
so it's actually got to be, there's got to be input into like how much can everyone afford, because you can't just assume everyone can afford that.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think if the maid of honor or if the bride or groom, whatever, if they want something specific that costs a lot of money, maybe they need to pay for that, and that needs to be their gift to the bride, or that just needs to be them paying for that.
Yeah, obviously different cultures come into play, because there's some cultures that they're like, no, it's complete etiquette for, you know, I don't know, the father of the groom or whatever to pay for something. And that's all fine too. That all comes into consideration. I think it's definitely circumstantial. So
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's a hot topic. Like there's so many layers to it, and it can cause like serious arguments, you know, and that's not what you want for your wedding.
Absolutely. But you don't want people to be financially strained either.
No, and resent the day. Like you don't want people to be like, oh gosh, that wedding was so stressful because it sent me broke, you know. Yeah. So anyway.
So speaking of hens or bucks parties, is it okay to invite somebody to your hens or your bucks but not invite them to the wedding? That was a question that we had.
I feel like it's not okay. The only circumstances I feel like it's okay in is if you're having a really intimate wedding but you want to celebrate your hens or bucks with, you know, some of your broader friendship groups. I feel like it's weird. For me, I would feel like this is weird if I got invited to someone's hens and then I didn't get an invite to the wedding.
Yeah.
I'd be like, that's weird. Why am I coming? Like, why am I at your hen's day if I'm not invited to your wedding?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's like a bit, am I too black and white? Like, I just think it's weird, and it's
what
like.
What if it was like a work friend and they weren't having any work people.
Oh, I think look,
That's okay.
I think that is different. Maybe okay. You've turned me. No, I think that's okay, but for sure, but like it's kind of like, do you invite, like, would you invite people to your ceremony but not to your reception?
Oh, we did that.
Oh,
Yeah,
see, I feel like that's weird. So I'm disagreeing with Dana and Doug here. Like, I'm outnumbered.
Yeah.
Olive, are you on my side? Oh, Ruben's like, yeah, I don't agree with you either, Mum.
No, I just think I've seen a trend in more recent years where people have had like heaps of people at their ceremony and then have like an afternoon tea, and then half those people go home and then they have like a more intimate reception. So I think it's okay to invite someone to your hens or bucks and then not have them at the wedding. But I think it definitely depends on your friendship with that person, how you know them. Like, I don't know. Hens and bucks can be so personal as well. So
Yeah.
But I think it really does depend. I don't know, like why you want that person there as well.
Yeah, true. Would you invite me to your wedding if you got married now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, maybe not the reception.
Only to the ceremony.
Yeah.
This is what I mean about Dana and I getting feisty in this episode. Like,
It does kind of come back to doing things how you would like to do them. But obviously considering other people's feelings is always really important as well.
yeah, agreed.
If you have any questions that you would like us to answer on the podcast, you can contact us via our email or DM on Instagram. If you're enjoying listening to our podcast, we'd love it if you gave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you know someone that's engaged or getting engaged, it would be really helpful to send them a link to the podcast so that they can have all the planning tips that they need for planning their wedding. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.